Hello again, everybody. Welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. Gamecocks coming off a big recruiting weekend, and we've still got 2 weekends to come before National Signing Day, which will take place on Wednesday, February the 3rd. So, Wes, talk about who was on campus for the Gamecocks this past weekend. We've heard a lot about Sam Bruce, the wide receiver out of South Florida. Marlon Character, an Auburn commitment, a defensive player, was in this weekend as well. And the Gamecocks got some very good news that Richland Northeast product, Tj Brunson, the linebacker, MVP of the South Carolina team for the Shrine Bowl this past year, committed to play for South Carolina. So a big get for the Gamecocks to start this week.
Yeah, I think we almost have to start right there with TJ's commitment. A kid that we've been very familiar with. I think we've talked about him on the podcast, and I think points again to this coaching staff's not just willingness, but really truly a want to make in-state prospects a true priority. I think you look at a kid who lives literally like 15 minutes away from Williams-Brice Stadium, 15 minutes away from campus, and someone that has kind of developed a little bit of a name for himself locally here in Columbia and in South Carolina, was the defensive MVP at the Shrine Bowl for the Sandlappers team, and a kid that I know you talked to Coach Fry, a kid that at least everyone I talked to, Emerson, has nothing but good things to say about Tj Brunson, both as a player and a person.
Yeah, Brunson, 6 foot, 220 pounds, and an inside linebacker, had 138 tackles this past season, his senior year at Richland Northeast. And Coach Fry told us that Brunson's been over 100 tackles for 3 consecutive years, so he's a tackling machine, Wes. And, obviously this is the type of player that the Gamecocks need desperately on defense right now.
2 things that I think we have to point out when it comes to Tj Brunson is, especially these days with as much media as covering recruiting, a lot of times these kids are very hard to get in touch with at times. And, I generally don't interview a kid throughout his recruiting process as much as I probably did, 4 or 5 years ago when I started really doing this. But I think, I look at TJ, I think I've probably interviewed him more than any other kid in this staff, or in this class, I should say. I've interviewed more than any other kid in this class. So, you look at TJ and just the maturity that he's handled the entire recruiting process, and between, interacting with him in those interviews and just chatting with him otherwise, kind of off the record about where his head is at with stuff. I think he's very easily one of the more mature kids that I've ever, covered as far as his job goes. I honestly think back, Marcus Lattimore, being around that recruitment. Bryson Allen Williams was a kid that I absolutely loved to cover from a recruiting standpoint. Just a great kid when it comes to that. But as far as maturity level, TJ is up there with any of them. He's handled the process with class. And then, I think something that speaks to him on the field is you look at the coaches that were really pushing for him late. I know it kind of, to me, TJ had a little bit of an odd offer list. Like I always kind of thought there should have been more bigger name schools as far as what type of player I thought he was. And, I look late, though. You've got, I think, 2 of the better defensive minds in the country in DJ Durkin, who is now the Maryland head coach, and then Bud Foster, who's been the Virginia Tech defensive coordinator for countless years. I don't even know how long he's been there. He's been there as long as I've been alive, I think. So, you look at those 2 guys. You had Virginia Tech with Foster was at Richland Northeast on Friday. I think Maryland was talking about coming by this week, maybe even Monday was the plan. But, both those schools really wanted Brunson to take an official visit. Durkin has followed TJ from Florida, when Durkin was there in a Muschamp. Then, of course, he was at Michigan. He still recruited Brunson a little bit there, and now he really wanted Brunson once he got to Maryland. So, both those schools wanted him to officially visit. I think if he had extended it out and not committed, then he absolutely would have taken an official visit to Maryland at the very least to check those guys out. So I think here very late, with a great performance at the Shrine Bowl, another, like you said, another 100-tackle season, some of the better defensive minds that have been on this kid. And then you look, obviously, Will Muschamp. I think his defensive prowess, his defensive what he's been able to do as a defensive coach sort of speaks for itself. So I think that says a lot about Tj Brunson as a player.
Right. It certainly appears that Brunson likes the new staff at South Carolina, and he did have a big senior year capped off by that MVP performance in the Shrine Bowl for the South Carolina defense, the Sandlapper team. And, it looks like Brunson has hit it off with Muschamp and this staff, and he was originally committed to Louisville, but now makes his pledge to the Gamecocks, and it will become official on signing day coming up on Wednesday, February the 3rd. So a big get for the Gamecocks, Wes, not only from a talent standpoint. We feel like Brunson can play at the SEC level, but an important statement, I think, for Gamecock football to make, getting back to their roots in South Carolina and signing a kid from right here out of Columbia.
Yeah, and I think on our board there with some of our fans, shout out to you guys, that are listening, that they're on the board. So some of you guys out there, I think, enjoy bashing the old staff a little bit more than you maybe should, and I think that when I'm talking to a few of our select posters, of course. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff, especially in recruiting, that you can talk negatively about the previous staff about. But I do think, fair is fair. I think Tj Brunson probably ends up at South Carolina, even if Spurrier is still at South Carolina. This is a kid that really, even despite the Louisville commitment, I think as long as Carolina wanted Tj Brunson, he was always pretty much destined to end up here in the end. I think one thing that South Carolina had going for it that maybe no other school could really compete with was that with the previous staff, top to bottom, and the current staff, top to bottom, is they all had a relationship with Tj Brunson. And, you might have a recruiter of record or a position coach really with a great relationship with Brunson at some of these other schools. But here at South Carolina, the comfort level he had with the entire coaching staff, knowing who he is, knowing what he's about, knowing what type of kid he is, very comfortable interactions there. I think that is something nobody else could compete with. And then, it was very interesting. I talked about his maturity. I think worth pointing out, the biggest question Tj Brunson seemed to have about South Carolina was could he still grow, as a person without kind of that whole I need to get away from home to experience college. That was really, I think, his only true question about South Carolina was, do I need to go a little bit further away from home to kind of truly grow up? And I think just for a 17 or 18-year-old kid to be thinking in that mindset kind of speaks to what type of person he is. And obviously, I think just the relationships he has at South Carolina were just going to be too much to beat out, I think.
All right, the Gamecocks picked up a commitment from Tj Brunson, linebacker from Richland Northeast High School here in Columbia. And Wes, Coach Fry mentioned that TJ is a baseball player as well. Is there any word of TJ possibly playing baseball here at South Carolina also?
No. I don't think so. I hate that I didn't mention that earlier. I think he took a year, maybe a couple years off from baseball. He actually, for what I heard, baseball was actually kind of his first love. But he's
okay.
back playing baseball. It's one of those things where he's always been a pretty good baseball player. Wants to spend his senior year, his last opportunity to play, playing baseball again. So I don't know what position he plays. I do know he can hit it. Like he's got some power, as you would expect. He's a middle of the order guy. I think that's really. For what I was told, didn't get that straight from TJ, but for what I was told, I think that's more of a senior year, last opportunity to kind of play team baseball like that, and he wants to take advantage of that. I think Mr. Brunson is going to be all football at South Carolina.
Great. Okay, Coach Fry played for the Gamecocks. He played on the '84 Black Magic team, and he's the head coach at R&E. And he says that Brunson is just an athlete, and he thinks he's going to be ready to play in the SEC and contribute to the Gamecocks, and had nothing but good things to say about Tj Brunson. So this is a very exciting commitment for the Gamecocks to pick up, and exciting for the local high school community as well to have a local product commit to play for the Gamecocks. Gamecock Central Radio here, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We invite you to download the new phone apps that allow you to listen to Gamecock Central Radio on your phone. We have an iPhone app and an Android app, and we're on iTunes. Simply search Gamecock Central Radio for all three. Wes, let's get back to this past weekend, big recruiting weekend. The good news coming that Brunson has committed, but there were other prospects and recruits, targets that the Gamecocks are after on campus making official visits this past weekend. Tell us about them.
Yeah, a really big recruiting weekend for South Carolina. I think that you're going to see that really all 3 weekends, including this past one, then the next 2. You're going to see big recruiting weekends for South Carolina. Lots of prospects on campus. I think the, maybe process right now, or the thought process is sort of that they know it's late. They know there are going to be guys that are going to be long shots. But if you can get as many of these long shot type guys on campus as possible, then maybe you steal 1 or 2 guys that you never thought you were going to get. So, I think Sam Bruce, the 4-star wide receiver you mentioned, he's a Miami commitment. I still think you almost have to put him in that long shot category based on what I've heard just from down that way in Miami, and then of course around here in Columbia following the official visit. So sometimes those South Florida kids though in general can be hard to read. We looked at obviously the whole Riley Ridley situation we talked about. South Carolina, it appeared, just absolutely stole him, and then next thing you know, he's going to Georgia. So these guys, especially with them being so far away from here, hard to get too much of a read on exactly what they're going to do. My gut instinct with a guy like Sam Bruce is that he's a bit of a long shot. But then Marlon Character, the 4-star safety from Grady High School in Atlanta, Georgia, very, very interesting in that he was committed to the previous South Carolina staff, to the Gamecocks. Then he committed to Auburn, of course, to Will Muschamp and Travaris Robinson at Auburn, and now takes an official visit to see South Carolina with obviously T-Rob and Muschamp here in Columbia. So very, very strange situation there. And, from what I've heard, at least prior to the official visit, is that Character is really, truly torn between the two. I think he found a great comfort level at Auburn. He's got a girlfriend that I believe is going to be going to Auburn. And, I think he really likes Auburn as a school, as a place. And that's actually very common in Atlanta. You have a lot of Auburn connections in Atlanta, and then everywhere from Atlanta to Auburn, that kind of area, I think you got a lot of Auburn just fans. So that's not really too much of a surprise. Then you talk about, I think, probably his 2 favorite coaches being Muschamp and T-Rob. So, it's a very interesting situation. And I think, I don't think I need to get in the business of predicting when it's going to be this close, because I think it's going to be very, very close between South Carolina and Auburn, and maybe even comes down to signing day with him. And I guess there's some other guys we could talk about. Keel Pollard, I think, is a wide receiver that was on campus, and he didn't get in until Saturday, so they kept him an extra day because of that. And really, really good player. He's got 3 stars on his name right now, but I think he's a guy that would be a candidate to move up to 4-star in our final rankings. And I hate to invoke the name, but he actually really on film looks a lot like Pharaoh Cooper to me.
Wes, Gamecock fans, when you go 3-9, the fan base is going to be looking for someone to blame after having 33 wins in 3 years, then go 7-6, and then 3-9. Fans are looking for someplace to lay the blame. And the Gamecocks' losing season this past year has been placed largely at the feet of Steve Spurrier and the previous staff, particularly with regards to recruiting efforts or what some might perceive as a lack thereof, particularly in-state. But that ship has now sailed, and Muschamp and this new staff have been very aggressive, and they're getting results right away. So I understand fans' frustration, but I think the important thing is to look forward, not backward. So, Wes, we've got 2 recruiting weekends remaining before signing day. What will the Gamecocks have in store for the next 2 weekends?
More of the same. You're going to see lots of prospects on campus. You're going to see lots of prospects taking official visits. Some of them, are going to be a little bit of the long shot variety. I think you'll also see names get added to these lists in the coming weeks. South Carolina staff is right back on the road as we get into a new week. And then you look at, the fact this is an evolving recruiting board, I think. I think if this staff had been here for, a full year, it'd be a much different situation. But it's a reviving recruiting board. It's a situation where South Carolina's going to keep trying to get big-time prospects on campus and just say, look, there's an opportunity to play early. So I think if you're a recruiting fan, it actually should be a pretty exciting final couple of weeks heading into signing day, because there is just a degree of uncertainty where you don't know quite exactly what's going to happen.
Well, it certainly will be a critical couple of weekends. A lot of people think of this as the off-season, which it is, but the coaching staff hard at work, working on recruits as we continue to near signing day coming up on Wednesday, February the 3rd. So a couple of very important weekends for Gamecock recruiting with official on-campus visits scheduled each of the next 2 weekends. Wes, good update today. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Sounds good, man. You have a good one. We'll talk to everybody soon.
All right. Thank you, Wes. That's Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips. You can get breaking Gamecock news alerts delivered to your email inbox. Just text USC to 42828. Text USC to 42828 or go to Gamecock Central's homepage for more information. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Emerson Phillips. We'll have more here on Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for being with us.